I'm Santanu and I'm a senior research fellow and professor of modern literature and culture. Welcome to my exp. Touch is the most intimate and the most elusive of the senses. Is it one sense or a group of senses? I think touch is the one sense that completely defeats the powers of representation, because you can reproduce sight, camera, you can now see me on screen, or through sound, or even smell can be simulated. But touch dies with the person, as if life hovered on the corpuscles of our skin. And I think literature struggles through metaphors, images, narrative structures to communicate this most intimate and almost evanescent of the senses. This is a letter from Lance Corporal Fenton to the mother of a close friend, Jim, who had just been killed. So he's writing to the mother, I quote, "I suddenly saw Jim reel to the left and fall with a choking sob. I did what I could for him, but its stout heart had already almost ceased to beat, and death must have been instantaneous. I held him in my arms to the end, and when its soul had departed, I kissed him twice, where I knew you would have kissed him, on the brow, once for his mother, and once for myself." These are singular moments of intimacy and intensity, vulnerability, a sense of impending death and mutilation, bereavement, and a diffuse eroticism. Sexuality had not yet hijacked a more intimate history of emotions. There's a certain almost radical innocence about letters such as these. On 21st of May 2001, there's this extraordinary discovery by a team of French archaeologists of this mass grave near Arras in northern France, where they found this 11 bodies buried, and then one more just next to it, at a slight distance, joined arm in arm. And I don't think there's ever been discovery of a group burial like that. They were all privates, and the officer slightly maybe separate, but again we don't know. But what is remarkable is that when I look at it, I almost see the traces or shadows of this other hands who must have arranged the hands of the dead soldiers under fire as a testimony of their friendship. So the affection and the care that must have gone into the process to arrange them like that. And in a way, it's a very moving, one of the most moving tributes to this whole idea of camaraderie. But equally telling is this slight distance between the men and the officer. Touch, being the most intimate of the senses, was also the most intimate frontier along which I think empire was policed. For example, in the First World War, there's this huge scandal because this white nurse was touching the shoulder of this Indian soldier. One of the most striking examples of touch along the lines of color is that of two hands that we see. We do not have any names or faces. We see this white hand, uniformed, quite assertive, as you can see in this photograph, guiding this black hand or colored hand to put a thumb impression. And you realize this is the stamp for recruitment, and this is how most of these soldiers of color were recruited. And I think the whole hand had been dipped into an ink pot to get this impression. And this is one of the most impersonal examples of touch, as against this other picture that you see, where this badly wounded or badly injured Indian soldier in a wheelchair. He's dictating a letter to the Indian scribe, but also leaning across to touch the shoulder to say, "Thank you, my friend, for writing the letter for me." And I think these are two very interesting examples, one across the line of color, impersonal, almost savage, and the other full of tenderness. One is reminded of one of the key moments during the AIDS epidemic, and that's of the photograph of the 32-year-old David Kirby, the kind of AIDS activist, as he lay dying, and he is comforted by his father, and then kind of couple of feet away there is his aunt comforting her daughter, and then the carer is seated on the other side, and it's almost like the modern Pieta. And I'm reminded of a few lines from one of the poems by Tom Gunn. "And you perceived that he had to be comforted. You climbed in there beside me and hugged him plain in view, though you were sick enough and had your own fears too." And this is exactly what COVID had deprived us of, this little hugs, pats, and caresses by which we reach out and connect to people. During COVID-19, those 2 meters or 6 feet determined for many of us not just how we responded or reached out to the living or failed to, but how we continue to make peace with the dead, because we were not allowed to visit them, to touch them. And at a personal level, I remember going to the concert for the first time after the pandemic, and it was an overwhelming experience of being with other people in the same space. And suddenly we realize how absolutely even this touching at a distance is important to the functioning of our everyday lives. W.H. Auden, in The Age of Anxiety, said that in moments of crisis, even the smallest expression of affection takes a profound dimension. And during war, during the First World War, Second World War, we are living at the moment through several wars. And we have these pictures of people absolutely ravaged, destitute, dying. And yet there are moments of touch and intimacy. COVID was very different. There was not this brutalization by industrial weaponry. There was this invisible thing, but there also could not be this sense of touch and intimacy, which is so needed in these moments of crisis. I think the problem with touch is that sexuality has hijacked the history of emotions, and it is very difficult but also very important for us to carve out a space for non-erotic touch. This world of hugs, pats, and caresses that we are gradually losing in this excessively sanitized culture. Perhaps for a good reason, but I think it has its own dangers.